verse 30, which we said was the end of the Jnana section, where Krishna talks about the difference between matter and spirit, so to speak, the body and the soul. Yeah. And from 31 onwards, he's going to talk about doing your dharma, doing your karma as per your dharma. Yeah. So let's increase the size of the pad. So verse 31 to 38 is it's a small section which basically deals with Krishna telling Arjuna how it's important that he does his duty. And when he does his duty, it's going to help him obtain happiness in this world. So he's going to get a lot of material happiness. So in terms of bhakti, this section doesn't directly impact bhakti. But then it indirectly impacts bhakti to a lot, to a huge extent. And we'll see how that is, okay? We'll see how doing our dharma or doing our duty is important. And we'll also see what it means when we say dharma. Okay? So let's read text 31 first. So please repeat after me. Swadharmam api chavekshya
स्वधर्मं चावेक्ष्य
na vikampitum arhasi
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि
dharmyadhi yuddhat shreyonya let me dharmyadhyuddhat shreyonya
धर्म्याति
kshatriyasya na vidyate.
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते
Okay. So up to here, Krishna has been talking about how the body and the soul are different, how the body is destructible, how the soul is eternal, how it cannot be changed, how the body, one shouldn't lament for the body, for the death of the body, how the soul cannot die, and how one cannot cause the soul to die, and so on and so forth. Okay. So, on one hand, why did that happen? Because you had Arjuna feeling very sad that he was going to kill his own people. And he was feeling very sorry for them. And he couldn't move. Remember at one stage in the first chapter, we read how Arjuna's trembling. Okay? So he says, Tvakchaiva sharirame samsrite hastat. What is that verse? Mukham cha parishishyati gandivam samsrite hastat. So his whole body is trembling, his mouth is running dry, the gandiva is falling from his hands. Yeah? And it is that state that Krishna is addressing right now. Okay? So here he says, sva-dharmam. The word sva-dharmam is made up of two words, swa, which means oneself, and dharmam. Okay? Now, dharmam can be variously translated into duty. Here it's translated into religious principles and so on. But we'll look at that in a little more detail soon. Swadharmam api cha avekshya. The word avekshya, iksha means to see. Okay? So looking at your own dharma as well, O Arjuna, na vikampitum arhasi. There is no need for you to tremble. The word kampitum basically means tremble. Now, what causes us to tremble? Why do we tremble?
Fear,
Fear,
ignorance,
ignorance,
attachment,
rage, very good, yes, yeah. Or when you feel that you've taken on more than you can actually accept. So for instance, if I'm able to carry only 10 kilos, but then if I'm holding 20 kilos and I'm holding up my hand like that, my hand's going to tremble, right? So the same way, not just with my hand, it goes for my life as a whole. If I feel that I've been painted into a corner and I just have no choice available to me, then as well, right? So Krishna is saying, I can see that you're all aflutter over here. But when you actually look at your dharma, O Arjuna, there is absolutely no need for you to be like this. So the word arhasi here uh, is, it again, Prabhupada translates it as you deserve, but there is really no equivalent when it comes to English. When we say bhavatah arhatam nasti, arhatam ityukte, it means um, um, you you don't have the right to, or you don't have the quality of. Okay, so in you there is that quality of trembling is not just not there. Okay, and yes, so you don't deserve to actually be hesitating, you don't deserve to be trembling, is what Krishna is saying. Okay, now why would Krishna say it so confidently of Arjuna? He gives him two reasons in the next two lines. The first reason, he says, dharmyadhi yuddhat. So this yuddha, this war that you have come to fight, is based on dharma. It is a religious war. On one hand, today, if we say religious war, then, it's almost like, people going off and killing each other in the name of religion. I'm Hindu, you're Muslim. No, we are not talking about that kind of religion. Okay? When we say religious principles, it means how, okay, we'll look at the next line and we'll come back to this in a minute. Okay? So the first is that this is a war which is being fought on religious principles. It's being fought on what is correct. Okay? And the second is kshatriyasya na vidyate. You are a kshatriya. Being a kshatriya, you have no right to be trembling. And it says, Shreya anyat. There is absolutely no Shreya, nothing better than you fighting for religious principles because you are a Kshatriya. Okay? So, yuddhat dharmyat. Dharmyat yuddhat shreyaha anyat na asti na vidyate. There is nothing better than a religious war. Oh, is that right? Oh, I'm talking about you, Arjuna. You are a Kshatriya. For you, there is nothing better than a religious war. Okay? Okay. Now, let's look at each of these concepts here, okay? When we say Kshatriya, the name Kshatriya itself defines what a Kshatriya is, or who a Kshatriya, what his duty is. Kshat means any kind of trouble. Triya it comes from the word trayate, which means takes out of. So one who takes you out of a troubling situation is a kshatriya. One who protects is a kshatriya. Okay. So, in which case, Arjuna, he says, this war that you're fighting is because you need to protect the religious principles and you need to protect the people. Why? Because the current rulers are irreligious people. These are people who are not following any religious principles. These are people who are not actually following their dharma, which is to protect the people. Yeah. So you are standing here, Arjuna, and you are faced with people who are adharmic. And therefore, being a kshatriya, there is no better engagement for you than to fight. Okay. So this verse is being spoken to Arjuna. Arjuna is a kshatriya. And Arjuna's sva-dharma, therefore, is to fight for the right, to establish what is correct. Now, how does this then apply to us? That's the biggest question, isn't it? I mean, reading the whole Bhagavad Gita is great, but if we don't actually look at each verse and see how it actually applies to us, then it's just a story. So here, when we look at this, swadharmam, what is my swadharmam then? Now, how can we know what is our swadharma? What is the process? What do you think?
Follow the religious principles, practice it.
What do you mean by religious principles?
That is following what the Vedic scripture says. We have to follow that.
Yeah, but how many people today know the Vedic scriptures?
That's a good question.
Isn't it? So,
But it
It
doesn't mean
may
that you have to follow, you have to study the rituals of those things,
mm,
because if you study in Veda Padasala, then only you can understand all these things. But instead of doing that, if you chant that, that itself equivalent to that following the Vedic principles. In
okay,
Kali, you have to follow the dharma of what Kali say, what you follow in Kali Yuga, that you have to follow. What it says, you have to practice that Maha Mantram. That is sufficient.
okay. Now that is at a spiritual level. Yes, Mataji.
I think adharma would be our roles and responsibilities in life,
Yes, very good.
as
Can you
maybe
elaborate on that?
like dharma as a mother would be
Yes,
to protect and nurture and look after her children, or
correct.
maybe in as a professional, if one is a doctor, for instance, his or her dharma would be to make people better health wise.
Yes,
And so each one has their roles and responsibilities laid out in their personal or professional life. So dharma would kind
right.
of be fulfilling those.
Okay. Now, how does, which brings me back to the question, how does one actually recognize one's dharma? So these dharmas, okay, today you have you have young children. So the dharma of a mother is, probably it takes priority. When your children are married and go away, it changes, right? So dharma can actually be seen at various levels. Okay. So first is, for instance, let me ask you a question. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, right? So why is he a Kshatriya? Because he loves to fight. Okay, and that's his nature. How do we know it is his nature? Because the Mahabharata gives us so many examples. Yeah, in fact, for this verse, Shankaracharya actually in his commentary, he says, Arjuna is such a wonderful Kshatriya. He actually fought with um, Lord Shiva himself and gained the Pashupatastra. Okay. Now, fighting with Lord Shiva, is it easy? Fighting with Lord Shiva. Who is Lord Shiva? Lord Shiva is the personification of destruction. He's the personification of death. In a sense, because he's the one who does pralaya, right? So he is the personification of destruction. To fight against Lord Shiva and please him so much by his prowess that Lord Shiva willingly hands over the Pashupatastra to Arjuna. What does that tell us about Arjuna?
That he really excelled at whatever he did. And
yes, that he excelled at being a warrior, right? Now, how can you excel at something?
practice, I think.
One is practice, yes.
Focus.
Yes. Yes, Bhadramataji?
When it's your nature, your very nature to do something.
Yes, absolutely. When it's in your very nature to do that. No? So what that means is, what do you mean by when it's in your very nature? Suppose I were to ask you, tomorrow we are going to go and join the army and we are going to go fight. How many of us are going to put up our hands and say, yep, I'm in? Because I would love to do something like that. Why have we all not gone off and joined the army? Or why have this lot of us not gone off and become lawyers? Or why have we not gone off and become surgeons?
It is an interest.
It's an interest. Correct? We just lack that basic interest. It's not something that stirs in us. That doesn't mean that we won't do it if we are faced with that situation. We probably would do it and do it really well because some of us are perfectionists. Whatever we do, we have to do it properly. But are we going to be doing it happily? And what is the toll that perfectionism is going to take on us when we are doing something, when your heart is not in it 100%? So Arjuna's very nature is that of a Kshatriya. His very nature is to fight against evil, fight for the right. His very nature is such that in the middle of the night, he would sit up practicing how to shoot arrows in the dark. That is how much he loved being an archer. That is how much he loved being a warrior. You don't hear that of any of the other Pandavas or the Kauravas. But you hear it of Arjuna. Wherever he went, unchallenged. In the war of Virat, he was all alone on one side and the entire Kaurava army on the other side. and he defeated the whole lot of them. Such was his prowess, and that prowess doesn't come just by sheer practice. It comes with practice, of course, but that practice arose because his entire being was being a warrior. So that means that we need to sit back and look into ourselves as well to see what is my true nature. Because here the word is sva-dharma. Swa means that dharma is specific to one person, to me. How do I look into my nature? How do I then figure out what my duties are and dovetail it with my nature so that I can then do the best job that I can do? And this involves some amount of introspection. It involves shutting everything down and just looking inward and saying, what pushes my buttons? What makes me truly happy? We hear that nowadays, don't we? That, oh, children should be, and also, who is that? Was it Maslow? Maslow's hierarchy? Where we talked about the pyramid and then we have the self-actualization right at the top.
Need hierarchy.
Yes, needs hierarchy, that's the one. So in the needs hierarchy, right at the top, what does he say? He says self-actualization. And what does that actually mean? It means recognizing oneself and then fulfilling that need. So if my need is to help out in terms of being a doctor, that's what I love to do, then I've got to figure out how to do it and do it right. So, sva-dharmam. So Krishna is saying, now your dharma, O Arjuna, is a kshatriya's dharma. Now look at your dharma. It means you fight. And what are you saying? Oh, no, I can't fight. I'm falling to pieces. I'm shaking. He says, na vikampitum arhasi. You are not allowed to do all that. That is not who you are. You've got to fight. And don't be afraid. Remember you said, oh, if I fight, I'll incur sin. He says, don't. Think like that, because here, this yuddha is dharma yuddha. You're fighting on behalf of righteous principles. So if you're fighting on behalf of righteous principles, there is no need for you to fear from anything. And in this verse, Prabhupada then brings in what Prabhuji said earlier. He says, there are two kinds of swadharmas or specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of that particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. So, perform duties of that particular body. So like Mataji said, you're a woman, you're a mother. There are certain duties attached to it. Yeah. You're a father, there are certain duties attached to it. You're a wife, there are certain duties attached to it. You're a daughter, there are certain duties attached to that. You're a sister, certain duties attached to that. So all those duties which are attached to the body, and again, when that body is very young, there are certain duties. As the body grows older, there are certain other duties. Okay, so there are duties that are related to the body. Then he continues. He says, when one has to perform the duties of that particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. Okay. Now, this particular idea is expanded by Lord Sri Krishna subsequently as well, and we'll look at it there. But when you actually do your dharma, and in the later chapters, Krishna says, you don't even have to do it correctly. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just do your best with your dharma. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. Okay? And that itself leads to liberation. And we'll see how that works a little later. So Prabhupada continues, when one is liberated, one's swa-dharma or specific duty becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. So this is what Prabhuji was talking about. So in the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties for brahmanas, kshatriyas, respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. But swadharma is ordained by the Lord. Okay, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. So 4th chapter, verse 13, Krishna says, he says, Chaturvarnam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashah. He says, I have made the 4 varnas. What are the 4 varnas? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. I have made these 4 varnas. Now, I have not just randomly made 4 varnas. They are based on guna, karma. Okay? They are based on these 2 things. So, guna means what? Nature. So, it's not in my nature to go be a warrior. It's in my nature to sit and read books and teach. I'm a teacher. Or it's in my nature to actually look and cure the sick people. I'm a doctor. Or it's in my nature not to fight a war, but to fight in the courts, asking for justice. I'm a different kind of kshatriya. I cannot bear blood. Yeah? So, in the 4th chapter, when Krishna is talking about guna, karma, this is what he's talking about. What is our nature, intrinsic psychophysical nature? Guna is psycho, karma, physical. How do we actually work? So based on this, there are these 4 divisions. So every single human being will fall into one of these 4 divisions. How are they? Brahmana. Brahmanas are people who are intellectual. These are the thinkers or the philosophers. In the earlier era, we used to call them sages. Muni, the thinkers, seers. So you have Brahmana. Then you have the Kshatriya. These are the people who will stand up against any kind of injustice. And they will be vocal about it and they will do something about it. A friend of mine the other day, she was talking about some issue and she goes, if somebody starts a protest, I will join. So I asked her, why don't you start a protest? Why are you waiting for somebody else to start it? But that's not her nature. She will never do it. And even though she says, I will go and join, she's never going to go. I know her. She's just getting very, very angry, upset about something. That's it. But her nature is not that. So you have Kshatriya, who will stand up and fight. Then you have the Vaishya, who in every situation will figure out, how do I make this work in terms of money? How do I make a business out of this situation? Whatever be the situation, good or bad. How can I find some money in this? Money is to be found everywhere. According to the Vaishya, there is not a single situation where money cannot be found. you'll see some people like that. They are just born. They can't, they think, they see the world in terms of numbers like that. Doesn't make them bad people or anything. They're the kindest, sweetest people. But everywhere they see money. And they attract that money to them. Business people, the Vaishyas, the Shudras, these are the people who will do anything to go out and help others. They will not care about whether they, these are the people who will, in any situation, be looking for how can I do something to serve somebody else. These are the people who are always helping. Now, when we say Shudra, today the word means Shudra, lower caste. It's not. Think about this. A Shudra is a person who will give up his own ease to help somebody else in need. And even if that person doesn't need it, he will try and make that person's life more comfortable by giving up his own comfort. That is just his nature. It is said in the Shastras that every human being is born a Shudra. Janmana jayate Shudraha. By birth, we are all born Shudras. Why? Because it is in our nature, all of us. I think we talked about this earlier as well, didn't we? Where we said everybody, every human being needs to serve. And we are all serving. We are all servants, whether we like it or not. At the very minimum, we are serving people in our family. And then we all have jobs, so we go out and serve. And then we are serving other people. And then there are people who are not serving anybody else, who, take the elderly people, for instance. What are they doing? They have a cat or dog in the house and they're serving the cat and the dog. But we need to serve. That need to serve is intrinsic in a human being. Janmana jayate Shudraha. That is what it means. We are all born Shudras means what? We are all born to serve. Then, through all these various samskaras, we figure out what else we can be. So then we can say, okay, I love to teach, therefore I'm a teacher, so I come as a Brahmana. But when I'm teaching, am I not serving? I'm serving my students, am I not? So everybody, irrespective of who they are, whether they are Brahmana, Vaishya, or Kshatriya or Vaishya, they have to serve. And the job of a Shudra is to serve. The Shudra doesn't do anything beyond serving. He's not expected to do anything beyond that. But for a Brahmana, there are certain other things that he's expected to do. Kshatriya, he's expected to do more than just plain serving. He's expected to protect. Brahmana is expected to teach. He's expected to perform pujas and so on. Vaishya is expected to increase the wealth in society. The Shudra is expected to help all these people. So Sva-dharma is ordained by the Lord, and this is clarified in the 4th chapter. Guna, karma, vibhagashaha. On the bodily plane, Sva-dharma is called Varna Ashrama Dharma. Varna Ashrama. So Varna are the 4 Varnas, right? So we just said, what are the 4 Varnas? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. Yeah? And the ashrama. There are 4 ashramas. Ashramas depend on our age. Okay. So the first 25 years, one is supposed to be celibate. One is supposed to be focused on studying, learning. So that is called brahmacharya. Brahmacharya ashram, being a brahmachari. Then the next 25 years, you're expected to marry, produce children, have a household life. So you are a grahastha. Then after that, you are expected to move out little by little by little. And you are expected to actually sit and contemplate, what have I done in my life so far? How do I progress from here on? And because you're expected to sit and contemplate, it cannot happen inside the house where you have 5 children, 8 grandchildren, and a host of wars happening between the different children and the in-law, the daughter-in-law. This daughter-in-law doesn't get on with that. All this happens in the house. You're not expected to stay in the house. So you leave the house and you go stay in the forest. And that is why it's called vanaprastha. Now, in today's life, we don't go to the forest. We still stay in the house. So it's all the more important to put up that curtain, that virtual curtain. It's not an actual curtain, but it needs to be a virtual curtain, which we can shut down everything else that's happening and just focus on ourselves. All my life, what have I been doing? How have I wasted my life? What do I need? What corrective actions do I need to take now? How can I then move forward? What are the things I'm going to put in place so that I can move forward? And start with all that. And our scriptures give us 25 years to do this. So from the age of 50 to 75, it's not just 1 year, 2 years, come on, get your act together. No, it gives us 25 years to slowly, because disengaging from family is so difficult, isn't it? There is a story, I'm sure many of you will know the story. So there is a rich man, okay, and he keeps praying to the Lord. He keeps saying, "Oh Bhagwan, mujhe utha le. Bhagwan, please take me. I'm done here. All this is just not for me. You know, enough is enough. Lord, please take me back." One day, Narada Rishi comes to him, and he asks this man. He says, "Okay, so how are you doing?" He says, "What to say? You know, I'm stuck in this material world. I'm stuck in this family life. What to do? I don't get time to do enough, puja, bhakti, and so on. What this? I keep praying to the Lord to take me." So Narada Rishi says, "Oh, is that so? Come, I'll take you right now." So he looks at him, he goes, "What do you mean?" He says, "Yeah, I'll help you die right now. You know, just give up your body and I'll take you back to Krishna." The man goes, "Oh, but see, this is the problem, isn't it? My wife is pregnant right now. How can I leave her and come? So maybe, just give me another, few months. Once the baby is born, I'll come with you." So Narada says, "Okay, promise, I'll come back in a few months' time, okay?" So he comes back, asks the man, "Are you ready to come?" He goes, "Bhagwan, how can I leave such a small baby and my wife? Poor thing. Maybe, when the child is a little older, maybe when he's about 5 years old, I'll come." Says, "Okay." Narada comes back at the age of 5. So he says, "Are you ready to come now?" He says, "Look at my child. He's so cute. Look at the way he talks, the way he laughs, the way he does all this. Who would want to leave his child right now? Don't be so hard-hearted and take me right now, okay? Give me another 10 years, by which time he will have finished everything and I'll get him married off early, okay? So, oh yeah, give me about 18. At the age of 18, you come. I'll have him married off and, at that time, I'll be ready to come with you. Narada says, okay, he comes back when he's 18. He says, see, he's just got married and his wife is pregnant. Let me just see the face of my grandchild and then I'll go away. See? So Narada comes back when the grandchild is born. He says, do you want to come? But before he can answer, at that time, he is bitten by a snake and he dies. Okay. And he's reborn as a dog. Now, when he's reborn as a dog, he's still outside that same house. Okay, he's reborn as a dog over there. Narada comes back and says, oh, what happened to you? So he says, oh, what to say? See, I was bitten by a snake and now I've been born as a dog here. So Narada says, okay, dog body, no. Now at least you can come, right? You don't have any children. You don't have any. He says, are you joking? Look what this wife of mine has done. Who is this wife? The wife from the previous life, okay? He says, look what this wife of mine has done. She's left the door open. All the jewelry is out there and she's gone out shopping. I'm sitting here guarding this house for her. How can I leave this and come now? So our attachment, Narada says, there is nothing I can do for you anymore. No? So how much ever we keep moaning and groaning about, oh, I need to give this up, I need to go away and all the rest of it. When it comes down to actually doing it, it's almost impossible. And that's why the Shastras give us 25 whole years. Just take your time. But at the end of 25 years, you are going to be completely liberated from your household life, which is the first step towards liberation. Otherwise, you're so busy hanging on to all this. So that's why the third ashrama is Vanaprastha and the fourth ashrama is Sannyasi, Sannyasa ashram. Sannyasa means Satnyasa. Nyasa means giving up. Completely giving up everything. Why does one wear orange robes in when you become a sannyasi? When you become a sannyasi, does anybody know? Why you wear orange? The color orange is supposed to signify fire. So you already have given up your body. And now this body doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the Lord. And so you are completely surrendered to the Lord. A true sannyasi wouldn't even worry about where his next meal is going to come from, where he's going to stay. Because remember, he's already out in the forest as a vanaprastha. But as a vanaprastha, you're allowed to have a house. As a sannyasi, you're not allowed to have a house. You're not allowed to have a roof. You're not allowed to build anything. You're not allowed to wear clothes which have been stitched. It's said that the cloth should not be broken by a needle. So any piece of cloth that you find or somebody gives you a piece of cloth torn, you wear that and you keep going. That is how renounced a sannyasi is supposed to be. However, in Kali Yuga, that's very, very difficult. Because maybe in the rural parts of India, you'll still find, people who actually do this kind of, who give, alms or give away cloth, give away food. When you go to Vrindavan, there is a lot of people who still do that. But in the cities, it's very difficult, isn't it? Begging is not easy. You become a beggar rather than a sannyasi. The job of a sannyasi is not just to beg, because whoever is giving him something, he has to give that person something in return. You cannot just accept. Now remember, a sannyasi has nothing. So what can he give in return? The only thing he can give in return is knowledge. So he must give knowledge in return and accept something. But today, it's not possible. So today it's said, there is no need to become a sannyasi. Don't become a sannyasi. Follow the dharma for the Kali Yuga. What is the dharma for Kali Yuga? Just stay where you are and chant. Just chant. Stay where you are and chant. So here Prabhupada says on the bodily platform, sva-dharma is called varnashrama dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of varnashrama dharma, or specific duties, in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Now this again is important, because when we talk about a brahmana, so when we talk about modes of nature, what are we talking about here? Who can tell me?
Goodness, passion, ignorance.
Very good. Yes, Mataji. The three modes of nature, which are goodness, passion, and ignorance: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Yeah. So whether you are a brahmana, when you are a brahmana, you're supposed to be in the mode of sattva. Okay. When you're a kshatriya, you are in the mode of rajas. Highly rajasic, slightly tamasic. When you are in the when you are a Vaishya, again you are highly rajasic and a little tamasic. When you are a Shudra, you're mostly tamasic. Now, what does that mean? The three modes of nature, basically, if you look at chapter 14, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, so it talks about the three different modes of nature in great detail. And there, I think verses 6, 7, and 8, I think, are the ones that talk about the nature of a person in the mode of goodness, the nature of a person in the mode of ignorance, a passion, and the nature of the person in the mode of ignorance. One who is in ignorance is always lazy. He will not get up and do any work. Then the 18th chapter also tells us that he's the one who's always lamenting. He's the one who will always look and see only faults everywhere, only problems around. Okay. The person in the mode of goodness, the brahmana, supposedly the brahmana, but the person in the mode of goodness is one who will not do anything, not because he's lazy, but because he's just so above everything. If he's in the mode of goodness, passion is the one that causes you to move, get things done. If you're in complete mode of goodness, you're going to be just sitting around. So on one hand, you have the person in the mode of goodness who's not doing anything. The person in the mode of ignorance who's also not doing anything, but for totally different reasons. Which is why it is said that this world runs on passion. Everything in this world runs only because of people's passionate nature. So any creation that happens, any invention that happens, anything that happens is due to rajas. Sattva and tamas have nothing to do in that. However, when the creation is for good, then sattva has an impact. When the creation is for destruction, for instance, the atom bomb, that is tamasic in nature. So we look at, all that. Actually, in our next class, maybe what I'll do is I have a PowerPoint which I made long ago, uh, where I put together the three modes of nature from the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, the descriptions. So maybe we can have a quick look at that to see how, these three are so different from each other. So here Prabhupada talks about human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashrama Dharma. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashrama Dharma. If we are all civilized human beings, it's because we have divided up our roles, isn't it? What do our historians tell us? That early on, every man went out, the cavemen all went out and hunted for food. Right? And they all brought it back, and then they all cooked it and they all ate it. So there were no thinkers at that time. And that stage of life is not called a very civilized stage in history. Whereas what we see here, when we talk in terms of civilization, what do we see around us? We have different people engaged in different activities. And that is only possible when we divide them up in terms of their varna and their ashrama. So the very basis of human civilization is varna ashrama. And those duties are again in terms of the three modes of nature. So someone who is extremely tamasic will probably be, I don't know, a junkie, a drug addict who doesn't know, Rakshasas, who doesn't know what is happening around him. He's just totally spaced out. He's just out of it. So every person can be slotted into one or more of these modes of nature. And again, that will keep changing depending on what we are doing, the time of the day, and so on and so forth. So discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with Varnashrama Dharma serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. Now, how does it serve to elevate one to a higher status of life? We'll see in the next verse. Okay. So, any questions? Actually, this is, it's actually a very small verse, and it's a very, when you read it, it's a very simple verse, because when you look at the translation, it's actually very, very simple. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Yeah. But how does this actually impact each one of us is the question we need to ask. Yes, Mataji. Sujata Mataji.
Just a question. Maybe I didn't get it clearly, but you mentioned that tamasic mode of nature and being Shudra is
okay.
would
Yes.
say
Okay.
the same. But then you also said that Shudra is also someone who serves.
Yes.
Then
yes.
how come service and
So
tamasic nature, wouldn't service fall as a sattva
okay.
gun?
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right, Mataji. The thing is, we're talking in terms of predominance of a particular mode of nature. Okay. So when we say, uh, uh, so for that, actually, it's important that we go through those three modes of nature. Okay. And you see that when it comes to, okay, service is definitely one part of it. But then what defines a Shudra is the service. However, nature is another thing altogether. So you could be what is considered a Brahmana and be in the mode of passion or ignorance. Okay. So for instance, I may say I love teaching, therefore I am a Brahmana. Correct? But I'm always angry. I'm always lazy. You tell me to do something, I'm just not going to do it. Yes, I love reading. I love teaching. But that is only a small portion. That is one main portion of my life, yes. But there is also other parts of me, right? So when this part which deals with my laziness, my anger, overcomes my true nature of being a Brahmana, then I cannot call myself a Brahmana anymore. Now, similarly, when it comes to a Shudra, the one his job is to help out. His nature is, but then, like I said, every human being's nature is to help, is to serve. But along with that, the Shudra also has all these other characteristics, which is laziness, which is lamentation, which is just the inability to mentally grasp things around them. So these, while yes, he serves, he's doing that as a nature, but this is the one that's dictating his way of life. So, which is why people who are tamasic, okay, it's very rare that you will find them amongst, although of course in today's world, you find the most highly educated people being tamasic. Think about it. These are the people who are teaching our children and who are taking, who are injecting themselves, who are smoking, drinking. So in today's world, that somehow just doesn't balance up. Yeah. So while a Shudra is supposed to be serving, the nature of tamas is one that attacks a Shudra more. So the Brahmana today, is he truly a Brahmana then? If, I'm born a Brahmana and I go off and I eat meat, I'm involved in selling meat, I still wear my Brahmana thread. How does that work? So there is just, in Kali Yuga now, there's just too much contamination for these demarcations to work very well. So in that sense, yes, Mataji, you're very right.
Yeah, like there cannot be an absolute in
No,
any
no.
way. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. And which is
Yeah.
why I was thinking about, sharing that
Mhm.
PowerPoint with you,
And
because
saying so, it's also possible to transform in the sense a person can
absolutely,
overcome and actually, with awareness,
yes,
transform his or her mode of nature
absolutely,
with knowledge and practice. So,
absolutely.
again, it doesn't really have, I mean, that's why I get a bit confused always with the
Okay,
varnashrama and the modes of nature. I mean, is
yes,
there that kind of a relation that we can really establish? So,
okay. So when it comes to the Varna, one's nature you cannot change. Okay. So how much ever by awareness, I mean, I suppose you could still say, okay, I will go and be a soldier. And you might not, you might even be a fantastic soldier. And over a period of time, you might even start to like it. But your intrinsic nature, now, where does that intrinsic nature come from? That comes from our what is called vasanas of previous lifetimes. Vasanas or impressions. Okay, so in this lifetime, we are creating our body and our nature for our next lifetime. So it is so deep rooted. It is intrinsic to us. You know, it's intrinsic because again, it is not conscious, it is subconscious. That nature is subconscious. It's not a conscious nature, which is why all this meditation, going deep again, we were listening just this afternoon, you know. Today, everybody talks in terms of doing meditation. You know, everybody talks in terms of dhyana, right? But in yoga, if you see, dhyana is the penultimate stage. Before that, you have so many steps that you have to achieve, right? So you have the very first is yama and niyama. Yama, niyama means what? Controlling your senses, controlling your mind. Okay. Then you have pranayam, controlling your breath. Then how to sit, asana. Then you have, so there are so many steps. And then you have dhyana and then you have samadhi. So getting to that stage where you actually look inside and you're able to identify those vasanas is not easy. It's not easy. So that intrinsic nature of a human being, at least in today's world, 99.9% of people are going to be born with a nature and are going to die with that nature, without even being aware that they have a nature. Without even being aware that this is the nature that I have, you know, got from so many lifetimes. And without even being aware that, yes, through that dhyana, I can actually make some impact on that. If not in the current life, at least in my next life. You know? So, yes, you're very correct, Mataji. We can actually change our proclivities, but it's with a lot of difficulty. We can actually try and definitely overcome the three modes of nature, their impact on us. So while, for instance, if I am a Kshatriya, I'm born a Kshatriya, my nature is that of a Kshatriya, but because of the mode of tamas, I'm more a really lazy Kshatriya. I can actually look at that and say, oh, I'm being lazy. I should overcome that. So overcoming the modes of nature is doable. But coming out of my nature of being a Kshatriya and moving into a Brahmana, then I'm going, it's, you know, when you have wood, when you're polishing wood, you're supposed to go with the grain. Suppose the grain is going left to right and you start polishing top to bottom, you'll only end up ruining it. So it's the same thing with our natures. We have a certain nature. So we do what we are supposed to do with that nature. So being a Kshatriya, I might as well say, oh, I'm in the mode of ignorance, so I'll go become a butcher. Why? Because I like blood. Blood doesn't faze me. It doesn't bother me. So you can go this way or you can go that way. That choice is in our hands. Yeah. So a Shudra, when we say a Shudra can become a Brahmana, no. One who is truly a Shudra cannot become a Brahmana by changing his nature. He can definitely take up studies, he can definitely become a teacher, he can definitely become a Brahmana by his job. But if his nature doesn't allow it, if in his nature it's just not there to sit and study, he remains a Shudra. However, one is born a Shudra, but by nature he just loves to read, to teach. That is him. Then he's actually a Brahmana. And you don't put him down and say, no, you're a Shudra, sit there. You're in the mode of ignorance. No. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does, partly.
Okay.
But I'll try and kind of reflect on it, and
Yes,
if there
Mataji.
are more questions, I'll come up with them.
Yes,
next
please,
time.
please
Yeah.
do.
But thank you
Please
so
do.
much.
Thank you. So shall we stop here for today? We've gone a little over time. Yes, Bhadra Mataji, you have something to say?
Yeah, so that was very interesting. I really appreciated that talk. I have lots of questions, but I won't ask them now. But it's just one. I wanted to ask, what's the difference between vasana and samskar?
Okay.
Is there any difference?
Vasana is more our desire. And samskara is samskara is not only a desire, it's also dictated by our environment. So yes, the samskaras do dictate my vasanas.
Okay.
But vasanas don't necessarily dictate my samskara.
Yes. Okay.
So let me also think a little bit more about that, Mataji, and I'll get back to you on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So we are not meeting tomorrow. We will be meeting on next Saturday. Okay. Thank you so much. And Bhadra Mataji, if I can just have a couple of minutes of your time, please.
Yes. Sure.
Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Krishna Mataji, thank you so much.
Bye. Hare Krishna. Mataji, I had a question for you. So I have actually been in the process of I'll just stop recording first.